right. I am back with This Week at Tassi, my weekly news roundup program. A lot of stuff going on this week, kind of a range of things. Some of this is going to be more my particular area, others is like global market stuff. And we'll start with that one where there's been reporting that Microsoft has demanded a 30% margin from the Xbox division. So 30% profit margin. This was a while back, and this is why we have seen a number of moves at Xbox that seem kind of insane. This is the cancellation of a number of projects, no doubt expensive ones like Perfect Dark, and then also the obvious big one, which was the hiking of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate prices by 50%, which you never see that. Like, even streaming prices are always going up, but they go up like $1 or $2 at a time. And a 50% hike is nuts. And then add on to that, like, I don't even know what's going on with hardware. They're raising prices hundreds of dollars on hardware, blaming economic conditions. But I mean, I still don't know if they're making a profit on those, but they don't want to lose a ton of money on those. I guess you can't lose money if you're not selling anything. So you're not making anything. And, well, you can lose money not selling things. That doesn't make sense. But if you are kind of not selling a ton of consoles at a loss, I guess, that is better than the alternative. This is crazy. This seems like Xbox is being set up to fail by Microsoft because I don't, like, 30% margin is way higher than you would expect from pretty much anyone else in the video game industry. And the highest margin kind of stuff is definitely subscription services. So that's, a reason that Microsoft is A, leaning so hard into Game Pass, and B, just jacked up the rates of Game Pass a ton to try and increase those margins. And the other reason they did that is because they're rapidly approaching, if they have not hit already, a ceiling for Game Pass subscriptions, because where are they going to come from now? Where are Xbox Game Pass subscriptions going to grow? If you are like into the Xbox ecosystem, you have probably made a decision in the last 5 years or so whether or not to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass. If you are in the Xbox ecosystem and that's your main thing, probably a good idea. But, it's been years and most of those people are going to have it. They only have a few places that they can expand. One of them are individual cards they can pull, like when they put Call of Duty on Game Pass, which reportedly lost them a ton of money, but that's a one-time thing. The other expansion is, this is why they're pushing this whole like everything is an Xbox campaign, because they really want to get into this cloud streaming thing and have people stream on their tablets and smart TVs and whatever. And they imagine there's just some big market out there of current non-subscribers that are going to subscribe to Game Pass to be able to not play on a console. I don't know who this market is. If anything, it feels like a good supplement to existing Game Pass if you're mainly playing it on your Xbox or whatever, but there's not a market for people who only want to stream Xbox AAA games, which is, these big name games, but don't own a console. Like, what fraction of the market is that? So all of this it screams desperation on Xbox's side because they're doing all this insane, like, cancel all these projects, like lay people off, close studios, insane Game Pass price hikes, insane hardware price hikes. Like, they are scrambling to attempt to meet this profit margin, which I have no clue how they're going to do that. And it seems like Microsoft is setting them up to fail. So when they don't meet these metrics, they're going to be like, oh, we tried. Xbox isn't working out. Also this week, though, Xbox people, Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, have confirmed that, yes, we are still making Xbox next generation hardware. You kind of have to if this is supposed to come out in a year or two, because if you don't, and your whole thing is to make Game Pass, you can't really just lock Game Pass into the last generation of console and then just not have a new generation. So, Xbox isn't shutting down tomorrow or anything, so they have to kind of do something in the next generation. I don't imagine, like, despite all this, Microsoft is just going to, like, bring the hammer down and kill the whole brand imminently. I'm not going to say 5 years from now that won't happen, but maybe sooner. But you can see flailing now. Like, it is very apparent. It's not just like, should Xbox put games here? It's like, if you know this demand is in place, like behind the scenes, you can understand all of the moves they've made. Bad moves, but you kind of get the motivation behind it. So that was probably the craziest story I saw this week. I wrote like two separate stories on this, or maybe I didn't write about Borderlands. A combination sales story of Borderlands 4 and Ghost of Yotei. Borderlands 4, it was like originally reported that it was lagging behind Borderlands 3 in sales, but new information seems to indicate that it is exceeding Borderlands sales over this time period. That's not announced by Gearbox, but Randy Pitchford did retweet a number of these articles, and he's head of Gearbox, so I think he would know, even if they're not ready to release exact figures yet. It was the number one selling game of the month, and then Ghost of Yotei was the number 4 selling game of the month, but that was because they were being counted for like the first couple of days of release before the cutoff. Ghost of Yotei is matching reportedly or possibly exceeding Ghost of Tsushima. This is at a much different time of the market. The game is $70. We are not in the pandemic where gaming was boosted enormously. So all indications are that Ghost of Yotei is selling well. The comparison point just came up through an analytics firm that Ghost of Yotei has outsold Assassin's Creed Shadows on PS5 in 3 weeks when that game came out 7 months ago. I know people were like, it's not a huge metric. I don't know. That's kind of a big deal. And Ubisoft did, say initially that this was supposed to be one of their initially fast selling AC games. I think it was only behind behind Valhalla, so the narrative back then was like, this is doing really well. So it's kind of debatable whether, Shadows is disappointing or in the long term, or Yotei is just really, really, really putting up good numbers. It could be a little bit of both. I think maybe Yotei is the more kind of pressing, impressive story where all of this stupid culture war bullshit meant literally nothing, and people wanted a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima, which was awesome, and this game is really good too. I just did a review on it. I don't like it quite as much as Tsushima, but it's still a really great game. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. Reviewed really well. Audience scores are really high too. Shadows had them down. Maybe it was worse. Maybe it was review bomb, but that's not really happening with Yotei. So I think that's a really good story for Sony. The problem is, of course, is that Shadows is outselling Yotei more generally because it was on Xbox and PC. And Sony is consistently frustrated, I think, by their hardware limitation where you're only selling so many PS5s, and so that really hard limits where this game can go. Obviously, they're not going to pull an Xbox and throw this on Xbox, but they've been talking about their PC ambitions and how the gaps between, at least for this type of game, their big single player games, they might get shorter and shorter between PS5 release and PC release. Obviously, their live service games are launching on PC at the same time, but that you're going to see more of that, and you're going to see that gap shrink because Sony is, they don't have that Xbox narrative. They're not like, we're just giving all away our games, like this is crazy. But on the other side of it, it is still an issue to be super limited by one specific next generation console, because that creates a pretty hard line in terms of the cap that you can sell, even if something is selling really well. Next story, a tale of 2 Halloween events. We're getting very hyper specific here. I talked about Festival of the Lost earlier in the week. It's still broken, I think. It's really unfortunate because it's actually a pretty good event. They finally did at least a quasi new activity in terms of like a revamped Altars of Sorrow. And like, I always liked Altars of Sorrow, but then eventually it just became a way to like farm kills quickly, and that's sort of all you did, and the rewards were nothing. I appreciate going back to do it again and not doing the stupid ass Lost Sector throwing pumpkin thing. Well, you still throw pumpkins here, they did the solstice thing where it's just raining a bunch of loot on people. It's kind of nebulous, like what is the cutoff for like who's getting tier 5 loot or something. Now that I hit 450, apparently I like only get tier 5 loot, so I'm just drowning in this stuff. I think I've gotten a god roll of like literally everything I wanted in like 2 days. The glitches are frustrating. They can soft lock the entire encounter. I was getting soft locks on Reclaim. So it's typical Destiny where like, the content can be pretty good and then it gets broken and you don't want to play it because it's broken and super frustrating. And they extended it a week, but it's been broken soft lock for the whole week. But at least it's not Borderlands 4, which I wrote about this today. Literally the worst Halloween event I've ever seen. I'm not kidding. Like, it is baffling how bad this is. The Horrors of Kairos event is some shift codes for cosmetics that you just type in, no farming required. And then it is entirely based on finding those random white domes around the map, which are just completely random occurrences. And like when you're leveling and stuff, they're pretty good they give you the most purples and stuff. So you always want to go out of your way to find them. The problem is they're random and you can spend 20 minutes driving around and not see any. And they still haven't fixed the thing where if you get bumped out, the whole thing despawns. I don't think they fixed that. So you have people just wandering around trying to find these things. It's the same bosses. You kill them they're depending on your build this late in the game, like you're probably killing them pretty easily. And then they will never drop the Halloween loot. The Halloween loot may show up, I don't know, 5-10% chance, something like that. It's really low in the crates that they give you afterwards that you open. The Halloween loot is awful. The grenade is terrible. Apparently the assault rifle is terrible, I hear. And that's it. I think they have some sort of like, quote, weather effect that makes things red sometimes. It is truly awful. The dome, like, not only are the dome things already in the game, they're randomly spawning instances that you just can't predict. And then it's the same bosses, no different. This is crazy because Borderlands 3 had a really good Halloween event. Like they did a whole new area. They had a whole new boss. They had like actual good loot. So it's like, what happened here? It just feels like they ran out of time like before launch to like actually build something. And so they just did this. But like, I would argue this is worse than nothing because it just makes them look like they had no clue what they're doing. And like the player base wouldn't be like insulted with how bad this is. So total disaster. I have no idea what they were thinking. I cannot think of a worse Halloween event. Like you complain about Destiny holiday events and they're the same. This is nothing. Imagine driving around, finding an unmarked patrol event or public event in a random map. You show up. It's not even a public event. It's one boss. You kill it. It may send some bad Halloween loot to your postmaster. That is the equivalent. And so people complaining about haunted altars, consider the alternative. Arc Raiders. This did exceptionally well in its free beta. It peaked at 189,000 concurrents on Steam. Really excellent, especially for an extraction shooter, which is, as we know, not the most popular genre outside of a few long-running staples. This builds on the back of other very positive tests, both internal and external, that we've seen earlier. This is out in a couple of days. Is it the 28th? I don't. It's very close, and the feedback to this was largely positive too. I mean, there's some things to work on here and there. Apparently, they tuned the AI to be like absolutely brutal now, so the PvE stuff is really rough. But it seems destined to be at least some level of a hit, possibly a big hit. You gotta know what the metrics are because like 180,000 concurrent peaks. But we know the final game is $40, so that's got to carry over to some degree. But it's been a hugely best pre-selling or wishlisted or whatever game on Steam, so it does seem like it's gearing up to sell really well. I wrote an article about how Arc Raiders now coming out before Marathon is another bad thing for Marathon because if Marathon came out first, it's first to market. People are probably more willing to invest in it and give it a try. But if the people who are willing to try a new extraction shooter in the genre have bought Arc Raiders and have invested in Arc Raiders for 4, 5, 6 months or whatever it's going to be, and then Marathon comes and they're asking for another $40 to start a new extraction shooter experience, I think that is a tougher sell. People were saying like, oh, well, they should have come out in September when the game was broken. No, they shouldn't have. It should have been ready in September like they said it was going to. But here we are. I have heard, I'm not in the closed tech tests. I didn't really want to be, because then if I'm under NDA, I can barely talk about the game at all, which is not great for my job. But from everything I've heard, there's a lot of positivity. I think people are appreciating the changes that have been made, and it has evolved significantly from the famously bad non-NDA closed alpha in the summer. How much it evolves to launch, which we still don't have a date for that. It's supposed to be early 2026. Is debatable, but at least there's some inklings of positivity now. People liked the old game too. It's just a matter of, can that translate to a broader market? Because if you're going out of your way to sign up for a technical test under NDA, you are probably more predisposed to be interested in like the game as is, but it has to find a wider market. And I don't think we're going to have a true idea of what that's going to be like until there is some sort of open beta. That may be the very end of this year, could be very early next year, like a month ahead of release or whatever, or 2 weeks ahead of release, like Arc did. But if we're doing all the Concord comparisons, it was a huge red flag when they put that game online for its open beta. And it was like, I don't remember what it peaked at, like 3,000 or 4,000 concurrents on Steam. And you're like, okay, if that's the free beta, isn't this going to be like a quarter of this where people actually pay? Lo and behold, it was a quarter of that, and I didn't break 700 concurrent players. Do not think Marathon is going to come close to that. Maybe that'll bite me in the ass. I don't think Marathon's going to be close to that. The closed test, I think, is already peaking at 4,000. So I don't think it'll put up Arc Raiders numbers, certainly, but I think all these comparisons to Concord are overblown. I do think it's going to get time from Sony, at least a year of full content releases and stuff. I mean, Suicide Squad got a year of content releases. Like, Jesus, give them a break, Sony. Then we have some just kind of weird AI stories that keep popping up. God, we're going to talk about AI till Kingdom Come. It's kind of a split between the bad news / development, where Krafton, the gaming company that has made things like PUBG and Subnautica, and they bought the Hi-Fi Rush studio, has announced that they are an AI-first company now. Here's the statement. Through our AI-first strategy, Krafton will broaden growth opportunities for each individual member, expand player experienced creative endeavors, and lead AI innovation across the entire game industry. We will establish AI-centric operational standards to present best practices that serve as a reference for the global games industry. And they talk about how it's going to be integrated into every level of the company, including features in games, stuff like that. So it's going to be a division here between the scale of people that are using AI and whether it's going to be pushed back or whether it's going to be all consuming. The other side of the scale is Pocket Pair just announced they make Palworld. They've developed a publishing arm. Obviously, they're not super huge yet, but they've said specifically they're not going to publish generative AI games or AI stuff in games. Also, they mentioned Web3 and NFTs, which I forgot about. Unfortunately, AI is not as clearly going to be thrown out of games as Web3 and NFTs were, but they all kind of lump it together. So some places are declaring outright that they're not going to do AI stuff. You'll remember a long time ago that Steam rejected blockchain, NFT, and crypto games. And Epic Games was yeah, you can do those. So I'm curious what Steam will think about AI, but it doesn't seem like you can do the same thing. What level of AI and internal development is okay? Can you catch for sure AI generated assets in the game? It's a lot different than this game is built on the blockchain. So, quote, hunting these down is going to be more of a general, a lot of AI stuff turns into witch hunts, and it's not really everyone's fault because it's just so indistinguishable in a lot of times, and it's getting more so that you can just be fooled by it. And also things that are not AI are being accused of being AI. So it's right now I think it's easier to spot in games, but we'll see how that pans out in the future. In between this is some kind of odd story about an insider report that the Halo next Halo game is going to have generative AI, quote, woven into every aspect of future game developments, including world building and enemy AI. I've also heard pushback on this with other insider people saying that that's wrong. Apparently, I think they're announcing a Halo game today, but I'm recording before that. I don't know when that's going to happen or what exactly that's going to be, but if that happens, I'll talk about it probably in a separate video. I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about a Halo game in general, but the AI stuff, I guess, we'll see about that later. I'm just mainly concerned about 343 delivering a good Halo game because that seems like a tall order for them these days, at least in terms of campaign content. And yeah, so some people might be asking why I'm not talking about the Counter-Strike knife/skin market crash where like a bunch of billion-dollar valuation got wiped out of that. It's because I don't really understand it. I'm aware of this market, but like I don't know enough about it to fully dive into it. I know that it got really insane and was like borderline money laundering, but I don't probably know enough about it to fully comment on that, though I know it is a very big deal. I've always hated this kind of thing. It's just gambling and annoyance, but yeah, I don't know, whatever. I don't bemoan anything bad happening to that market. In terms of me, I just finished Ghost of Yotei. As I said in my review yesterday, liked it a lot. I am kind of taking a break from games for a little bit. That was a lot of Yotei. I was playing every day pretty much for 3 weeks to do everything. I was going to play the Borderlands Halloween event, not doing that. I may do a little more of Destiny's Halloween event if they fix it. Mainly, I'm just catching up on shows. I just watched the new season of The Diplomat. I'm watching Boots, which is really good. And the new It show comes out on Sunday, which is supposed to be really good. So looking forward to that. Yeah, so that was kind of a long one. But yeah, anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.